You think you know Aaron Rodgers' story, a Super Bowl champion, a four-time MVP, a future Hall of Famer, but I challenge you to look beyond the accolades. The real defining narrative of his career isn't just about what he won, it's about the multiple near misses in NFC title games and the championships that slipped away. His legacy is shaped not only by his talent, but by draft decisions and free agency moves that undercut his prime. And now, as Rodgers faces the reality of an Achilles injury and the twilight of his career, the question of what could have been looms larger than ever. So how does it happen? How does a quarterback who executes one of the most masterful postseason runs we've ever seen, hoisting the Lombardi Trophy at just 27 years old, never get back to that stage? To understand the gap between promise and reality, you have to go back to the moment when expectations were set. The scene is February 2011. In a high-stakes game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Aaron Rodgers throws for 304 yards and 3 touchdowns, posting a 111.5 passer rating, nearly flawless on the biggest stage. He is named Super Bowl MVP, and for a brief moment, he stands alone at the top of the football world. But this wasn't just a celebration of a single championship. It was widely seen as the start of something far bigger. Analysts and experts didn't just speculate about Rodgers winning again, they projected it. Many models and forecasts at the time predicted Rodgers would make at least 3 or 4 Super Bowl appearances over his career, with some even suggesting he could anchor a Packers dynasty to rival the Patriots. Rodgers had the arm, the intelligence, and the clutch gene. The team looked stable, the roster loaded, and the future seemed inevitable. The very next season, Rodgers not only met those sky-high expectations, he blew them away. He led the Packers to a 15-1 regular season, throwing for 45 touchdowns and just 6 interceptions, and took home his first league MVP award. The setup for back-to-back titles and a sustained run at the top seemed complete. Then, everything changed in an instant. In their first playoff game that year, a home divisional matchup at Lambeau Field, the heavily favored Packers were outplayed and stunned by the New York Giants. The offense sputtered, Rodgers faced relentless pressure, and the most dominant team in the league was eliminated after just one game. The coronation was abruptly canceled. That loss wasn't just a blip. It marked the start of a trend that would come to define Rodgers' postseason legacy. The Packers, with Rodgers at the helm, became known for regular season brilliance that never translated in January. Year after year, the script repeated itself. From Seattle's 2014 rout to the famous Hail Mary letdown in Arizona, to multiple convincing losses to the 49ers, the gap between their perceived greatness and their postseason results grew wider with every heartbreak. This is the essence of the unfulfilled prophecy. After that first title, the expert projections were clear. Rodgers was supposed to be a fixture in Super Bowls for years to come, but the reality fell short. The early playoff exit of the 15-1 team wasn't just a missed chance. It set a tone of lingering frustration and what-ifs that would follow Rodgers for the rest of his career. Instead of a dynasty, fans and analysts watched as opportunity after opportunity slipped through Green Bay's fingers, leaving Rodgers' legacy defined as much by near misses as by his undeniable brilliance. Of course, it's never just about one player. Even a generational quarterback can't win it all alone. The reasons behind this unfulfilled prophecy go far beyond the numbers on the scoreboard. They're rooted in the decisions made off the field, in the boardrooms and draft rooms where championship windows are either opened or quietly closed. For Rodgers, the tension between his personal quest for greatness and the Packers' organizational philosophy was never just a background issue, it was the defining struggle of his career. While Rodgers put up historic numbers and delivered MVP seasons, the front office, first under Ted Thompson and then Brian Gutekunst, stuck to their draft and develop approach. This strategy wasn't just a preference, it was an identity. For nearly 2 decades, from 2005 through 2024, the Packers didn't use a single first-round pick on a wide receiver or tight end, a fact that stands out in league draft records and fueled mounting frustration. The impact on Rodgers' supporting cast was clear. The Packers rarely, if ever, brought in a Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver through free agency during Rodgers' tenure. Instead, as veteran stars aged or became expensive, the front office let them walk. James Jones was allowed to leave after 2012, Jordy Nelson was released in 2018, and Randall Cobb was not re-signed in 2019. Each decision was justified by the team's desire to get younger or to manage the salary cap. But for Rodgers, it meant saying goodbye to trusted targets and starting over with rookies or unproven receivers. The chemistry he built with these veterans, especially Nelson, was irreplaceable. and the revolving door of new faces put even more pressure on Rodgers to elevate everyone around him. Rodgers didn't keep his frustration to himself. Over the years, he dropped hints in interviews, sometimes openly questioning whether the front office was doing enough to keep the team competitive in the short term. He talked about the value of experience and leadership, and about how important it was to have weapons who could make a difference in the playoffs. But the Packers' leadership stayed the course, managing the roster like a long-term investment and betting that their system would outlast any single player, even one as talented as Rodgers. The tension was about more than personalities. It was a fundamental disagreement about how to win in the NFL, build for the future or go all in for the now. The 2020 NFL Draft made this conflict impossible to ignore. After a 13-3 season that ended just one game short of the Super Bowl, the Packers had an obvious need for another offensive weapon. Instead, they traded up from pick 30 to pick 26, not to select a receiver from a loaded draft class, but to take quarterback Jordan Love, Rodgers' presumed successor. The message was unmistakable. The front office prioritized the team's long-term outlook over maximizing the final years of their MVP quarterback's window. For Rodgers, it wasn't just a questionable move. It was a public statement that his urgency and the organization's vision were no longer aligned. This wasn't a one-time misstep. It was the result of years of decisions that left Rodgers without the elite help many of his peers enjoyed. The Packers' refusal to adapt their philosophy, even as their superstars' prime years ticked away, created a rift that only widened with each playoff disappointment. In the end, the divide between Rodgers and the system wasn't just about football strategy, it was about time, priorities, and the cost of sticking to a plan no matter the consequences. When that gap became impossible to bridge, Rodgers faced a choice: stay and accept the status quo or find a new path. What followed would test not only his legacy, but his sense of purpose as the end of his career drew near. When Aaron Rodgers landed in New York, the move was more than just a change of scenery. It was a calculated gamble for both quarterback and franchise. The Jets, long stuck in mediocrity, were suddenly the center of the NFL universe. Rodgers' arrival triggered a 40% surge in ticket deposits for 2023, a clear signal of how one superstar could instantly reshape a team's brand and bottom line. Media outlets drew comparisons to Tom Brady's Tampa Bay revival, and the Jets roster, filled with young talent, now had the veteran leader they'd been missing. The storylines wrote themselves. Could Rodgers pull off a legendary last act and finally capture that elusive second Super Bowl ring? The anticipation only grew as the season opener approached. The Jets, usually relegated to the background, were now featured in primetime slots. Rodgers' jersey sales spiked. New York's practice facility buzzed with cameras and reporters. Fans believed, maybe for the first time in years, that greatness was within reach. On Monday Night Football, under the bright lights and with the football world watching, Rodgers finally took the field. The energy in the stadium was electric. But everything changed in a matter of seconds. On his fourth snap, Rodgers dropped back and was sacked. He stayed down, clutching his leg. The stadium fell silent as trainers rushed to his side. The diagnosis came quickly: a ruptured Achilles tendon. Just like that, his season was over before it had even begun. The Jets' Super Bowl dreams evaporated in real time, and Rodgers' last best shot at rewriting his legacy vanished with them. This wasn't just another injury. It was the cruelest twist yet in a career defined by near misses and what-ifs. For Rodgers, who had spent years imagining a triumphant second act, the abrupt ending felt especially harsh. The narrative that had been building for months, Rodgers as the missing piece, the savior, collapsed in less than a quarter of football. The moment became an instant symbol of the fragility of even the most promising plans. Months of isolation and rehab followed. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, Rodgers was forced to step away from the relentless cycle of preparation and competition. He watched as the league moved forward, new storylines unfolding without him. The realization hit hard. The NFL, for all its spectacle, doesn't wait for anyone. The months away from the field gave Rodgers time to reflect on his journey, the missed chances, and the reality of his own football mortality. In a candid interview on the Pat McAfee Show, Rodgers opened up about this turning point. He admitted that before the injury, he believed he had several years left in him. But as he put it, the Achilles tear forced him to see that he was a lot closer to the end than the beginning. Those words weren't just a medical update. They were Rodgers' acknowledgement that his career, for all its brilliance, might end with unfinished business. As the dust settled, the impact of that final snap became clear. Rodgers' journey, marked by extraordinary talent and relentless ambition, now stood as a powerful example of how quickly even the best laid plans can unravel. The story wasn't just about football anymore. It was about the forces on and off the field that shape a legacy and the hard truths every athlete and organization must eventually face. Rodgers' career forces us to confront a tough question. How does a quarterback this brilliant, who led the Packers to 5 NFC Championship games in 2010, 2014, 2016, 2019, end up with just one Super Bowl win? The answer highlights a truth that goes beyond football. Individual brilliance isn't enough without organizational alignment. The Packers' playoff record during Rodgers' tenure shows that even MVP caliber performances can't overcome strategic misalignment between a star and the front office. For executives, agents, and athletes, Rodgers' story is a case study in the fragile nature of a championship window. Consider how aligning talent and strategy is critical in any business, not just on the field. Rodgers' story shows that talent unlocks potential, but strategy seals the deal.